Good afternoon, everybody. It's Thursday afternoon, and that is usually the time I put aside to write my sermon for the coming Sunday. I usually start my preparation for the sermon on the Monday before the next Sunday. I read the readings and start to pray about them. And then over the week, I keep returning to those readings in prayer and thought. And then on a Thursday afternoon, I sit down at my desk like this with the scriptures, with commentaries, and start to write it down or type it on my computer. And so I thought that I'd let you have a look at how I do this, but also that I would put out some thoughts for you to start thinking about, so that when you join me and Father Njengaseni on Sunday morning for Mass, that you will have some preparation for the readings as well as for my sermon. And so let's look at this second Sunday of Easter, which also is called Low Sunday or Divine Mercy Sunday. The first reading is taken from the Acts of the Apostles, as are most of the first readings during this Eastertide. It's taken from the second chapter of Acts, verses 42 to 47. And then the psalm is Psalm 118. The second reading is taken from St. Peter's first letter, chapter 1, verses 3 to 9. It's quite an interesting letter, actually. And then the Gospel is the famous story of the man whom we call Doubting Thomas. John chapter 20, verses 19 to 31. Perhaps we can look at this Gospel reading first. I generally tend to focus on the Gospel in my preparations and in my prayer, of course. So let's start with the Gospel of St John, the reading that we have for this second Sunday of Easter. The Gospel of John is the Gospel that focuses almost uniquely on this character, Thomas, whom many people refer to as Doubting Thomas. And in fact, Thomas appears 4 times in John's Gospel. They're little snippets, but he appears 4 times, and perhaps if you want to go and have a look, you can see those little appearances of Thomas in chapter 11, verse 16, in chapter 14, verse 5, in chapter 20, verses 24 to 28, and then chapter 21, verse 2. And in each of those little appearances, Thomas it's different. He exhibits different emotions and responses. In the first, he is quite courageous. In the second, he seems ignorant. In the third, our Gospel today, he is doubting. And in the fourth and final appearance, he is a man of faith. Aren't those similar sort of experiences each and every one of us have as disciples of Jesus? Sometimes we're courageous and sure and strong about our faith. Sometimes we're ignorant of our faith. We don't know, we don't understand. Sometimes we doubt our faith. Each one of us doubts our faith. And then there are also times where our faith is sure and we're comfortable and at peace with our faith and our discipleship. So those are some ideas for you to reflect on the Gospel for this coming Sunday. if we go to the Acts of the Apostles, of course, it's the story of the early church, the church establishing itself. And we're given, in this reading for this Sunday, we're given an image, a model of a perfect church, a perfect Christian community. And oh, how we would love all our Catholic parishes to be like that, eh? Parishes, people made up of people who were sure in their faith, confident of the teachings, that gathered to pray and worship generously with one another. A community that was incredibly open and generous in sharing their resources. We know that that is what God calls us to. That's the model of the early church. And that's what we would strive to be as a community. And so it's a good reading for us at this time of the corona pandemic, because it reminds us that's what we must be as a community. We can't be a community that stays closed in and locked down. We must find ways to reach out and to be generous and sharing. We may not physically be able to do it, but there are other ways we can. So perhaps a good reading for us for this Sunday. And then the second reading, St. Peter's first letter. We have a sense in that reading of a persecution, that the early Christians are suffering some sort of persecution. St. Peter's not specific about what that persecution is, but he sort of makes it clear that persecution is part of the discipleship deal, our faith deal, that there is going to be that for each and every one of us. That it's not just resurrection and joy, happiness, but that there is also challenge, and we may have to suffer some sort of pushback or persecution in our sharing the good news of the resurrection of Jesus. And so once again, that's a positive reading for us. It's a pastoral, it has a sort of pastoral aspect to it, this reading, because all of us feel it's challenging to reach out. All of us feel a bit embarrassed or uncertain at times. And sometimes we do feel persecuted, alone, and small compared to the challenges of our world. And so this reading speaks to us today as well. I hope you've enjoyed this little reflection on the readings, and I hope that it'll help you to be more open to the readings and the sermon this coming Sunday. I look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day. God bless. Bye-bye.